Hi guys, welcome to Womb Awakening 101. I am so excited to chat about this topic and just give some insight into what womb awakening is. And I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my story and how I got into womb awakening. And then we'll just dive into the basics of womb awakening, why we're so disconnected from our wombs as women. And then we're also going to be chatting about the Creatrix Blueprint that lives within our womb. So, to begin, my story with womb awakening, my womb awakening journey really began when I got off hormonal birth control. My womb awakening journey really began when I got off hormonal birth control. So prior to that, I had just been on a big journey of learning and discovering my intuition. And something that was just like really nudging me was the fact that I was meant to get off hormonal birth control. This was back in 2021, early 2022. And I had like no logical reason for needing to get off birth control. It was very much so just an intuitive nudge. And after a couple of months of stopping birth control, I started to develop symptoms of endometriosis. And it was just a really long journey trying to meet with doctors, get it diagnosed, all of the different things. If you have endo, if you have PCOS, really any like hormonal or reproductive issue, you know how difficult it is to work with doctors on this and how few answers you get. And so I really felt pulled while I was experiencing these symptoms of endometriosis to just journey into my womb and see what was living there, because intuitively I knew that there was a lot living within my womb. And a lot of what I discovered on this like self-led womb awakening journey was ancestral stuff. There was a lot of pain and shame and fears and just different wounds that I was carrying from the women who came before me, and really just went through a period of doing a lot of ancestral stuff, a lot of work with moving through wounds that my mom held on to, that my grandma held on to, and so on. And it's crazy because the women in my family on my mom's side, my dad's side too, actually, but especially my mom's side, have all struggled with different reproductive issues. So like endo, PCOS, cervical cancer, like there's just been a lot of that in my maternal lineage. And I really dug into it and found that it was just these suppressed emotions, this pain, the shame, the fear, all of the things that the women who came before me couldn't feel, couldn't express, just because they weren't given the resources to. And this is so normal and so common now for women to be experiencing these reproductive issues and having that underlying energetic imprint of that ancestral and generational trauma within their wombs, because the women who came before us didn't have resources like this. They didn't have spaces where they could express their emotions safely and feel their emotions. Like they were always having to hold it together. And so this then becomes a manifestation of physical disease, especially within our womb space. This like exploration of the energetic and emotional roots of endometriosis within me was truly my womb awakening journey. And I did so much, of course, with endometriosis and just bringing healing to that and processing a lot of those emotions. And also in the process of doing this, I began to really see like how much more womb awakening opened up for me. It really helped me to release like good girl conditioning and people pleasing tendencies. It really helped me to step into my power more, to feel more confident and self-assured within myself. It has helped me to love myself more and much deeper. And prior to this journey, like I truly didn't love myself. I struggled a lot to love myself. I struggled with disordered eating. I always wanted to just do all of the things to try to like make my appearance better, make me look better, make me more like attractive or wanted. And this is something too that so many women struggle with. I mean, we live in a society that tells women that they aren't good enough unless they look a certain way, unless they do a certain thing, unless they're X, Y, and Z, rather than being inherently worthy just as you are. And so that has also been a really, really potent aspect of the womb awakening journey. And it's ever unfolding. I'm always moving through deeper layers of this journey and just continue to learn more about myself. And I'm really at a point where I am just allowing it to happen organically, because there was a period of time where I was really into healing, and healing is beautiful. It's so beautiful. And like, I mean, I do this still with myself. I do it with my clients, but I've moved from this mindset of healing in order to fix myself towards like healing to become, and like allowing it to just be organic rather than, oh, I need to heal this in order to be worthy of that. So again, just a lot of like threads there around worthiness and that's a big aspect of the womb awakening journey as well. So what is womb awakening? I feel like it's just this beautiful term that is floating around, but so many people don't fully know what it is. And there are a couple of different like definitions for it, but it essentially is a spiritual and somatic practice of connecting to your womb as a source of power, as a source of intuition, as a source of creativity, and really just seeing your womb as like your core center that you operate from. It's also a healing modality that helps to heal those energetic and emotional wounds and imprints that live within our womb. And our womb is so deeply connected to every other part of our body, especially our heart and our throat space, and even our third eye, literally everywhere. So once you start to really awaken to your womb, you start to kind of like clear those channels, moving to those different aspects of your body and awakening your voice. That was another really big piece of my womb journey or of my current womb journey even, is just using my voice, activating my voice, speaking up, advocating for myself, like so many different things. But of course, we hear that women carry most of their trauma in their hips. And like, this is truly where a lot of that lives. And the womb is very much so an alchemical portal. And if we think about the menstrual cycle, this is that cycle that we move through to manifest. And we'll kind of get into the duality of that when we hit on the Creatrix Blueprint, but it essentially is this cycle of death and rebirth and growth and expansion and destruction, and then just continuing to move through that cycle. And your womb has its own light, like a very palpable light that it shines outward. And when we have those energetic imprints, those emotional imprints, that wounding, the traumas, everything that we're holding on to and not willing to look at and face, that clouds our womb light, and that clouds our creativity, our intuition, causes us to be not as magnetic to the things that we want and the things that we desire, because we're essentially clouding and blocking ourselves from that. And then if we take it back to things like endo, PCOS, any sort of physical disease, that is all of that just built up within our womb space. And so womb awakening is that healing modality to journey down into your womb and clear away everything that is in the way of shining that light more brightly. The womb, again, is a space of I am enough as I am. And it really is that space of like true feminine embodiment of knowing that you are enough and being so grounded and sturdy in that, and moving away from the masculine energy of always needing to do, always needing to be everything for everybody else, always needing to prove yourself, into a space where you again are grounded and can move forward in a grounded way and know when it's time to act and know when it's time to rest, or know when it's time to create and when it is time to destroy. So when we're talking about the womb, of course, we know of the womb physically as the uterus. And when we're working with the womb and like just the entire womb space on an energetic level, of course, we can go into the womb. And that is like that really juicy, potent, powerful place that is truly known as a portal that can birth anything into existence. But we can also talk about the different reproductive organs, like the ovaries that hold on to those seeds of creation. And I could probably go on a whole tangent about this, so maybe I will, but that's not what this masterclass is for. But womb awakening really just helps us to restore our womb back to its original blueprint, its original template. And womb awakening is not some like new age woo-woo thing. It is rooted in womb cosmology. And womb cosmology is an ancient religion that was honored and celebrated and revered all around the world prior to the rise of our current system. And so different ancient civilizations had worshipped and honored and revered the womb, not only the womb of women, but also the cosmic womb that was known to birth everything into existence, and then also planetary wombs as well. So the earth having her own womb that births everything into existence here. And then, of course, us as women who have our own wombs that birth and not only birth humans and souls into existence, but again, you can work with your womb as a source of creation to be able to birth your ideas into existence. And we'll get into that in a second. I also wanted to point out that if you don't have a physical womb, you can still do womb awakening. That energetic center still lives there and is still very much so alive and potent and ready for you to work with. You don't need the physical womb in order to do that. So women have become disconnected from their wombs for so many reasons. And I mean, one of the biggest reasons is just the fact that we've lost that like womb cosmology and that reverence for the womb and the reverence for the feminine, and the fact that the feminine is the one that actually creates and births things into existence. And we live in a society that has not only made women feel shameful for their womb and their entire reproductive space, but also has just like inherently disconnected us from that space. We live in a very mind-oriented society. And so because of that, like if we think about going to school, when you went to school when you were younger, elementary, middle school, high school, it was all logic. Like it was all mind-oriented. And I mean, even college too, that is just so different than the womb and then embodiment and like feminine. So of course, there's that masculine aspect of the logic that is very rewarded. But then there's a feminine aspect of being in our body, of slowing down, of listening, of being with some of that like heaviness. The creation again is like beautiful, but then there's the destruction aspect that is oftentimes missed. And that feminine aspect of humanity has just been lost for a really long time. And that includes the womb. I mean, the womb is literally the core of that. And so that has just been one major reason why we have been disconnected from our wombs as women. And another big one is just the fact that it's not always good. It doesn't always feel good to feel what is going on there, to feel the pain, to feel the trauma, to feel those like heavy emotions coming to the surface. And so we block them. We build blocks to keep us from accessing that. And so again, we're just living from our heads rather from our wombs and like really allowing those emotions to flow. Also, just a general lack of education around women and around our reproductive space and around the power that we hold. I mean, if we think about women's cycles and menstruation, think about what we were taught about menstruation and how it is seen societally. It is seen as a curse, as an inconvenience, like something that gets in the way, something that like we just want to shove down and push away, when it's actually like really, really powerful. I do have a podcast episode about this, so check that out. But our society, again, just has disconnected us from our womb by not teaching us about this stuff, which is, again, why we're doing this. And then, of course, sexual trauma is a really, really big aspect of this and a really big reason why women are so disconnected from their wombs. And sexual trauma, of course, can range, but it's all valid. And this causes us to essentially just numb out from this space in our body and be in our heads again and just like not want to connect to that space. And women just haven't been taught how to feel confident in their sexuality and in their desire. Like that is just another thing that has been shamed for women and inevitably just keeps us disconnected from our womb and the power of our womb. So some signs that womb awakening would be beneficial for you. The first, of course, is if you are experiencing any of those physical manifestations of disease. So endometriosis, PCOS, fibroids, just general hormonal imbalances, even like hormonal acne and infertility as well. So any of those like physical manifestations, that is a really big sign that you should begin womb awakening, because when it comes to those physical manifestations of disease or imbalances within our body, they are energetic. They're energetic, and womb awakening again helps you to journey into your womb to figure out what is out of alignment, what is living within your womb, what is imprinted on your womb that is ready to go. Another really big one too is if you are not feeling safe or grounded in your body, and if you are always in the thinking realm, if your mind is moving a million miles per minute, you're always trying to think through things, always trying to figure it out. That is a really big sign to begin on your womb awakening journey, because doing this and dropping into your womb helps you to be in your body, and it helps you to access a different level of intuition within your female body rather than being in your head and trying to figure it out. This is something that I come back to all the time because we just naturally live in a society where we do have to be in our minds a lot, and that's just the reality of it. And there's always so many moving pieces, and things are always moving so fast in our world. And whenever I find myself getting really overwhelmed, or if I don't know what direction to go in, I don't know what choice to make, I drop into my womb. And this has helped me with a lot of like really big decisions in my life as well. And it's just really cool to drop into your womb and to get that guidance, because it feels so nurturing and loving and like so grounded versus that like anxiety loop that we're usually on when we're trying to make a decision from our heads. Another big sign is if you are having any sexual issues or struggling to connect to your sexual energy, and womb awakening really will help you to, and again, especially if you have experienced sexual trauma of any sort, it will help you to really restore those boundaries within your womb. That's a really big aspect of womb awakening as well, is the fact that our womb has boundaries. It has its own beautiful like space that it occupies, but when we are in relationship to other people, we end up forming cords with them. We end up taking on their energy and not fully inhabiting our own energy. And so womb awakening really helps you to do that and to just like operate from a very clear space and a very sovereign space. And then womb awakening is also really helpful if you struggle with self-love. I kind of mentioned my journey with that as well. We're just continually fed the narrative that like we're not enough, we're not enough, we're not enough. And dropping into your womb makes you realize that you are enough and that you are perfect just as you are. And it really helps you develop a much deeper reverence for yourself as a woman, because you recognize how powerful you are, and you recognize that like again, you are worthy just as you are. And I would say that's like one of my favorite parts of womb awakening is tapping into that energy, tapping into that energy of feeling inherently worthy, because it really does make you feel like a goddess. Alrighty, you guys, let's talk about the Creatrix Blueprint. So I want to start with what the Creatrix is. The Creatrix is a feminine archetype that essentially represents the duality of the feminine. So I mentioned earlier that there is creation and there is destruction. And so the Creatrix is this embodiment of all of that. She is the embodiment of the cycles of the feminine. And so again, our menstrual cycle is just a really beautiful way to learn about this and tap into this. But the fact that we move through that death and rebirth cycle every single month as women who are menstruating. But another really beautiful way to learn about this or tap into it is with different goddess archetypes as well, different feminine archetypes. I talk a lot in season 1 of my podcast about different dark goddesses and the dark feminine, and how it's this very vital aspect of the feminine that has been shamed and suppressed and shoved down. And it's a part of ourselves that we tend to shove down and lock away and not allow ourselves access to out of fear and the like conditioning from our society that that's bad. But essentially, the Creatrix Blueprint is the innate creative intelligence that lives within our womb, that intelligence that lives within our womb to not only create, but to also destruct and destroy. It is that intelligence that allows us as women to move through that death and rebirth alchemical process that we have to move through, because we can't always be creating. If we think about it on like a purely biological, physiological level, again, with the menstrual cycle, of course, in ovulation, we are fertile. That is when we potentially hope to get pregnant. That is when ideas are flowing to us. And then we move into our luteal phase and we start to essentially descend. Then that is when a lot of things start coming to the surface. We feel angry, we feel irritable. And then we move to menstruation. If we are not pregnant, if an egg is not fertilized, then we begin to bleed. We begin to shed and release and let go. And then after that, we move into our follicular phase where we start to rebuild again and we start to gain more energy and more momentum. And so in our society, in our hypermasculine society, we are so focused on just the building aspect, the producing, the doing, the creating, but we don't focus on the destroying, on the letting things go, on letting things die. And so that really is this Creatrix Blueprint as it lives within you. It's this aspect of you that knows that there is not creation without destruction. Your womb is always pulling energy and information in from all around you as well. And I mentioned kind of earlier on that our womb is an alchemical portal. It's like an alchemical cauldron that pulls in energy and transmutes it and alchemizes it. And again, this is that creatrix aspect. It's like, okay, what can we pull from this? Like, what wisdom can we pull? What needs to go? What is like raw material in order to create? And it really is this process of being so deeply connected to your body and to your womb and the emotions that live there and everything that you're pulling in. And so this is why womb awakening is so important, because when we're not aware of what we're pulling in, when we're not aware of like what our womb is holding, what our womb wants to share with us, then it just stays there. It gets stagnant, it gets cloudy, and it gets blocked. And then that blocks us from creating, that blocks us from magnetizing and pulling in what is meant for us, because again, that womb light cannot shine. And so many women get stuck because they're not willing to go into the deep end and go into the underworld and really sit with that and sit with what is there within their womb that needs to be cleared out in order for them to step into more creativity. Because this would be like if we just honored our follicular phase and ovulation, which this is actually really common, but then don't do anything and we just resist that like uncomfy luteal energy. We resist menstruation. We resist all of the pain that we're feeling during menstruation. And so it just starts to build up. And like your like creativity essentially gets backed up. And so womb awakening just again helps you to reactivate this Creatrix Blueprint within you. And it's not necessarily something that you're like curating or creating. It's something that you begin to recognize and embody and remember within yourself. Okay, so I'm going to guide you guys through a womb awakening practice to simply just drop into your womb, see what it's like to connect to your womb. Maybe this is the first time you've done it. Maybe you've done it before. But if you've done it before, you know it's different every time. But this will just, again, be a practice to drop into your womb, to really like see what's going on, see how she's feeling, see if your womb has anything to share with you. And then we will be tapping into the Creatrix Blueprint within your womb. With tapping into the Creatrix Blueprint, we are going to be just asking your womb, like, what is ready to go? What is ready to shed and release and die, so that you can uncover more of this creativity, so that you can uncover more of this womb light within your womb and allow it to shine. And then, of course, you guys will have this practice to do whenever you want, whenever you feel called to. It is really beautiful to continue to do because, as I mentioned around my own womb awakening journey, is that it's a journey. You're always going to be like peeling back different layers. You're always going to be accessing different aspects and parts and pieces of yourself. You're going to access the same thing multiple times. I always mention the spiral path as like we're always on that spiral. We're always meeting deeper and deeper layers of these things. And so maybe you move through something today and then it comes up a year from now and you have to drop in and just do a little bit more of this work. And that's okay. And that's why it shouldn't be a process of like trying to fix yourself in any capacity. It's more so just a process of honoring yourself and allowing yourself to feel what was never allowed to be felt, and to just honor and revere yourself and your body as a sacred temple. I also want to mention that with womb awakening practices, sometimes a lot comes through and sometimes nothing at all comes through. Sometimes your womb might feel really angry or resentful because you haven't really connected to her, and that's okay. That's a really common one. And sometimes your body wants to move around. So, really, just giving yourself the space to do that. Make sure you set yourself up in a quiet, comfortable space where you won't be interrupted, and give yourself permission to move. Maybe you want to shake. Maybe you want to dance. Maybe you want to make noise, like howl, sing, tone, truly whatever. But the point is to listen to your body and allow your body to move and express in the way that it needs to. And it's also really normal to disassociate and try to like come back into your head. And so during the practice, just really staying mindful of your breathing. If you find yourself wandering off mentally, just coming back to your breath and bringing your breath down into your womb and allowing that to anchor you in. And I also want to leave it with this, but just be really gentle with yourself after doing this work. Be really, really gentle with yourself. It is work that will just continue on with you, and things might come up for days or weeks to come. So just give yourself the space to process whatever needs to be processed, and make sure that you drink lots of water and eat a lot of nourishing food to just fuel your body and give love to your body. Alrighty, let's get started.